should I have
Welcome to Media Path. I am Louise Palanker.
And I'm Fritz Coleman.
Our show is here to help you wade through a sea of media and come out the other side with treasures to enjoy rather than a mouthful of water. Joining us right here in the studio is our new best friend, Annie Korzen, who is an actor, writer, humorist, storyteller, influencer. Annie is a TikTok sensation, and her newest book is called The Book of Annie. It's full of wit and wisdom and some mild kvetching if you're sensitive to that sort of thing. So be advised, it is a unique delight. But first, Fritz, what have you brought to this
I'm so
bake
looking
sale?
forward to talking to Annie.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to talk about a podcast. I've never done that on the show before, because we don't need the competition. But
Sure.
this one is very entertaining. It's Smartless. It's Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean Hayes. And their mission is to unite people from all walks of life to learn about shared experiences through thoughtful dialogue and organic hilarity. This is three of the most naturally funny humans you will ever spend time with. I'd never listened to the podcast before until I watched a documentary on Max about the guys taking the show on the road. It's called Smartless on the Road. 6 episodes, 6 different cities, New York, Boston, Milwaukee, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles. The focal point of each episode is them doing the podcast in front of huge audiences. They pack these iconic venues all over. On each episode, one guy gets to bring out a surprise guest. The others try to guess who it is before they appear. They had guests like Letterman and Kevin Hart, Conan O'Brien, Andy Richter, Mark Cuban. They even had a not particularly famous genius from MIT when they were in Boston. But honestly, the most entertaining part of this documentary is just watching these guys traveling, ordering food, going to the bathroom, revealing interesting below-the-line things about themselves. Amazing honesty. And as you watch, you'll learn that each guy sort of has a role. Bateman is the intellect, overthinking everything, but he's hands down, honestly, the funniest guy you'll ever listen to. Will Arnett is so fast and so funny. He's sort of the everyman. Sean Hayes is the best audience who laughs at everything. And we meet Sean's husband, and we learn about his really dark childhood. And we meet his sister when we get to Milwaukee, and his frankness about being gay. You're a fly on the wall from some very real, unguarded conversations, which at the very least are hilarious. And at the most, 3 people being really honest and unguarded in the presence of a camera. It's called Smartless. The podcast is on all platforms. Smartless on the Road is streaming on Max.
What I loved is that if women want to know what male friendships look like, this is it. There's a lot of scatological. There's just a lot of, there's more rough housing than women when we get together. Yeah. And my favorite moment is when they're having like a frank conversation and they ask Sean like when he knew he was gay, and he's like, the Hogan family, which is hilarious because Jason Bateman was a teenager in the show that was first called Valerie because it was Valerie Harper. And then due to some contract disputes, it was called Valerie's Family. And then to an unresolved contract dispute, it was called the Hogan family. But Jason Bateman
Oh my God. Yeah. I didn't even get that joke, and now it's hysterical.
Oh my God, so cute.
But is Jason Bateman not hysterical? He's so fast.
He's wonderful, just wonderful.
I loved it.
They're warm and
yeah, it's just very real.
Very real.
I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah, and Will Ferrell comes out as Mark Twain.
Oh,
I mean, it's like you just can't
with
stop.
his pants like a foot too long.
I know, right? All right, so Fritz, here's what I've got. Let's see. Well, let me get to the beginning of my read here. Have you watched Science Fair on Hulu?
I haven't, but I'm so stoked about watching it because you've really been excited about it.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this. Kids compete in multitudes of arenas, from sports to chess to spelling to singing to baking to raising hogs, and all of these pursuits truly matter. But at the International Science and Engineering Fair, kids are solving world problems. At this event, you don't get to say to your child, come on now, honey, it's not rocket science, because, it may be rocket science. The award-winning 2018 film Science Fair has inspired a series by the same name. Both can be enjoyed on National Geographic and Hulu and Disney+, and they profile kids from around the world pouring their intelligence, effort, ingenuity, and very souls into a science project that could, yes, win a prize, but also positively innovate and improve our planet. Kids are working on fighting cancer cells, understanding suicidal tendencies, creating a sustainable electric motor, and harnessing new forms of plant energy. It's astounding to watch. And also, what you get to experience through these kids is the joy of creation because their raw teen emotions are still unfiltered, and their passion for science and discovery is raw, enormous, and beautiful. It's also quite moving and inspiring to see kids from all over the world, even in the most impoverished of places, with ideas and insights and incredible work ethics, applying themselves so meaningfully to their projects and dreaming so big about their futures and the potential to make positive change in the world. I absolutely love seeing science celebrated so jubilantly in the film and series when, honestly, on high school campuses, it still enjoys no cheer squad. For example, in the film, Kashfia Rahman is a child of Bangladeshi immigrants in South Dakota. Her school is very sports-focused, featuring many gyms and many teams, and 0 science labs. In order to compete in the science fair, she needs a faculty sponsor and finds one in the football coach who is fully supportive of her efforts but cannot quite articulate her project. She examined the neuroscientific and psychological processes underlying dangerous teen behaviors and studied how the environment plays a role in emotion processing and cognitive functioning in teens. And I hear you, Coach, I was reading that. She won first place in her category and received no recognition for this astounding achievement back at her high school. Kashfia is now an undergraduate student and psychology researcher at Harvard University. It should be noted that many patents emerge from ISEF every year. And whether a child makes it to ISEF or wins any prizes, just competing in science fairs teaches work ethic, follow-through, public speaking, workflow organization, and so many other important lessons in leadership, collaboration, and perseverance. What I would like to say, Fritz and Annie, to those who are concerned about poisoning our American bloodstream with folks from largely brown and black countries is this: the person who could save your life may be currently applying for asylum at our border. Science Fair, the film and series, are on Disney+, Hulu, and National Geographic. Highly recommended.
Get to work, kids. You have to save us from ourselves.
Yeah, and they shouldn't have to, but, they will.
My kids were not involved in Science Fair directly. The best science they ever did was figuring out how to make a bong out of an empty Coke can.
Okay. Ingenuity.
And that was the end of it.
So
Let's meet this fabulous, talented lady.
Would you like to meet our guest? She's been patiently listening to our recommendations and taking notes. Okay, so Annie Korzen is an American actress, comedian, and writer, and social media starlet. Annie played Doris Klumpus on Seinfeld. She's been on Pen 15, LA Law, Coach, Mad About You, Hannah Montana, Jane the Virgin, and so many other shows where you're going to recognize her. And now she is an author and a TikTok influencer. Welcome, Annie.
Yay!
Hi. So now that you finally have some influence in the world, what would you like to influence us to know and or do?
How would I like to influence you?
Sure.
Well, I think one of the themes of my book, in a way, is to open yourself up to everything. You don't know what you do is going to lead you to. So I have a kind of a mantra. It's called, yeah, why not? Now, within reason, don't ask me to go bungee jumping.
Okay.
Because I'm not going to say, but I think a lot of times we tend to say no to things because we're unsure, we haven't done them, we haven't tried them, it doesn't sound. And I'm saying try to override those feelings and take a chance and try something that you haven't done before. You never know where it's going to lead you to.
You're so inspirational to people my age, right? 70s. Because you have not been afraid to master this dark new technology, social media, TikTok, and instead of being intimidated by it, you have seized it and learned it and mastered it, and it really is quite impressive. You have
lying.
like 250,000 TikTok followers.
Oh, no, I have much more than that.
Okay,
I have
I'm
over
sorry.
400,000.
Well, see, that's what I mean. Right.
She's
But
working on 1 million.
The fact is, I'm going to tell you a dirty secret here. I understand nothing about it.
But you weren't afraid to have somebody guide you to it.
That's true. That was my big yeah, why not moment. A young person said to me, I've always loved storytelling. And I do storytelling. I'm with the Moth, and I do. And in LA, there's a storytelling show every night of the week. And generally, you're lucky if there are 40 people in the audience. And I said to a very young friend, I wish I could find a larger audience. I think I have something to say. I'm thinking of maybe putting some little clips up on Instagram. And she, being 30, said, Instagram. Never. It's so toxic. It's so last century. You belong on TikTok. I said, that's ridiculous. Who wants to see me on TikTok? And she said, trust me, you will go
Is that
viral.
Mackenzie Morrison?
That's it. Right.
Okay,
Right.
so is she the person filming you?
She was. I mean, we're still very good friends, but she's professionally is doing other things. She's gone back to school, but she set this all up, and she made me do it. And I just said, okay, yeah, why not? I'll
So
try
what was
it.
your first TikTok and how well did that do?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. But they started doing okay. And then I had one that got billions and I still don't understand it. It's the Krispy Kreme one.
And like we were
Do
talking,
that one.
you
Do
just
that comment.
never know.
I was just talking about donuts. People put a whole other meaning to it. But I just said to Mackenzie, and she answered me. I said, have you ever been to Krispy Kreme? Krispy Kreme, have you ever had a Krispy Kreme? She said, yeah. And I go, well, was it crispy? She says, no. And I go, right.
Enough.
Right. And I was going to go on, and Mackenzie went, cut.
No,
that's it.
That's the
perfect
secret to TikTok. That was
and that has had billions of views. I
So
don't
why-
know why. A lot of people think it's a woman trying to make small talk in an awkward situation.
Oh,
No,
that's
I
so
think it's
interesting.
I think it's more of a George Carlin-y
Observation.
observation that everyone else has had, because you said the other one that was viral that you weren't expecting was the one where you talk about how movies are an hour longer than they need to be.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It just resonated because we've all brought like a packed lunch to a movie and still been hungry when we came out. You know, because now they're making them the size of miniseries, but they expect you to go to the theater and sit there through an entire.
That's so funny. I just heard, I forget I just heard that there's an app. You can go online and it tells you when to use the restroom in each movie.
that's
It
so
tells you
funny.
which scene, because they don't have intermissions like civilized.
And you can't press pause in
you
a
know,
movie theater.
right?
Right.
So there's an app that tells you when to pee in each movie.
I don't need
So-
somebody to tell me when to pee. My body tells me when to pee.
So the Krispy Kreme,
But you don't want to go in a
It doesn't
crucial
matter.
scene.
When you get to be my
Right.
age, no, the pee dictates the length of the movie.
so
Well,
when,
what,
so
what
when-
are some of your big hits on TikTok?
so
What are the
Krispy
big-
Kreme was a big hit.
They're all surprising. They're all unexpected. You never know what's going to resonate. I did something about having a black grandson and about our relationship and about how people see us in the street and we get a second look. And it's not necessarily an evil look. It's just that they're trying to put it together. Why are the two of us together?
Because you're too old to be his mom, and they're trying to figure out the relationship.
Yeah, they say, "What is this old white Jewish lady doing with a beautiful little black child?" And and it's unconscious, but I can feel it. I can, and my point was that to them we look mismatched, but my point is. He has my humor. He has my love for music. He has my weird imagination. We are matched in every possible
Well, that's society's problem, not your problem. That's let them figure that out. Screw
Everything
them.
is. Everything is society's problem.
You are
isn't it?
so funny. Your book is full of really intelligent, wonderful witticisms. My favorite joke of yours, and this is not verbatim because
What?
I didn't memorize it, was you could tell Shakespeare was not a Jew because no Jew would write a play called All's Well That Ends Well.
That's so true.
Oh, man.
I
I
want to
fell
say
off my
something
couch.
funny about that.
What's that?
Once in my TikTok history, TikTok took me off for being offensive.
Yeah, that was it was a sex
Isn't that
conversation.
weird?
It
right?
happens to every TikToker. 'cause
Really?
We
But
don't
here's
know
what
what
I
their
said.
barometer is, and they have a weird barometer. Like
But
you can't even say the word sex.
But
they'll mute
I
you.
know, it's odd.
That's because it's a Chinese algorithm, and they
I
just
don't know. But here's what I said. Here's what they thought was offensive. I was talking about Tennessee Williams, how he was not Jewish, but he was gay, which is almost the same thing. And I just I was talking about the relationship between Jews and gays.
Sure.
Being outsiders, using humor, using blah, blah, blah. And then I said, there's an old showbiz joke. What do you get if you lock a Jew and a homosexual in a closet? And the answer is a Broadway musical. Took me down for that.
Really?
Took me off.
Because you gave away the formula.
Oh,
It's top
I don't know
secret.
what it was. But we, We went back and we protested, and they put us right back on.
Well, good for you. So there's a place that you can contact. And,
We didn't know it. There is, you don't talk to a human. This is all done by robots.
yeah,
of
because
some
our friend
kind.
John Maddox, who mixes this show, he's a viral TikToker too. His TikTok is about music production and sound production, and they've taken him down for
Why?
I don't remember the specific reasons, but none of them made any sense to us. Because the Chinese have their own. Like, do you know Dina? You could speak to this. She knows better than I do. But they have their own. Which was the one that I had up that they muted? It was about boys.
Yeah, because you were talking about, it was like something about boys, like schoolboys. I forgot who we interviewed. Go on, I'll look it up.
Oh,
So you talked about Moth. Have you been on the Moth Radio Hour on NPR?
I've been on the Moth Radio Hour.
I think that's just wonderful. And storytelling is different than stand-up, but it's a lost art. It used to be something that people gathered around to hear stories, and I love that. And there's
need
one
stories.
place, Largo does the uncomedy thing where they want you to be funny, but they don't want you to tell jokes.
Exactly.
They don't want you to do set-up punchline. Have you ever done that?
I haven't done Largo, but I've done a lot of the big one in L.A. used to be a place called Sit and Spin. That's where a lot of TV writers did, and now it's a place called Tell It. It's in a theater where there's a concert of storytellers, and the storytelling community is a wonderful one. It's very supportive, but performing with the Moth, I just did it. I just came back from Portland. 2,700 people.
That's great.
Sold out as soon as the show was announced.
It's a wonderful
People
theater
have
of the
a
mind
need
kind of
for
thing.
stories.
and what was the story you told?
My story is another version of it is in the book. It was about my postpartum depression when I spent the first 4 months of my child's life in various mental institutions, and it's a laugh riot
In Denmark.
in Denmark
It was-
and then in New York.
That was harrowing because you tell it with humor, but in like a Frank McCourt kind of, this is actually quite tragic way.
It is tragic, and what's tragic is it's still happening. Because it's a women's disease. Sorry for a moment of angry
I have
feminism.
postpartum depression after a good bowel movement.
But because it
can't
and other
bond
things,
with
because
his
it's a women's condition, not that much work has gone into it, not that much study has gone into it.
Sure, but on two fronts, the baby's and yours, because the baby is missing their mother during this period, and then you have to get well.
It's terribly tragic. But I only like to tell stories with happy endings.
Sure.
And the fact is, I am the world's greatest mother.
Oh,
and I
yeah.
have the world's greatest relationship with my son, even though I wasn't there for that first period. And even though I didn't breastfeed him, even though it's actually one of the themes of my book that there's more than one way to do things right. And the rules, you don't have to be a slave to the rules. You don't have to have natural childbirth. You don't have to breastfeed. There are all kinds of ways to starting life with an infant, and there are all kinds of ways to ending up being a great mother.
And your book, I just want to say this, if you're thinking of picking up this book is so well written. It's hilarious, and it's full of wisdom. This is a David Sedaris that we have here. She is excellent. This writing is just extraordinary. This book is really, really good. You'll be so happy you picked it up because you will laugh and you will learn something. And it also, it kind of frees people. Like what you're doing is giving everyone a hug and saying, it's okay, do you. And we need more of that.
I hope you're right about that. I'd like to give people permission to be themselves. I want to tell you something. I have all of my life been criticized, and I have apologized for being too talkative, being too opinionated, being too abrupt about my opinions. I've been told it was not an attractive quality. These were not attractive qualities in a woman. And I've always apologized and tried to tone myself down, and I try to do what you're supposed to do. And now I just turned 85. And I am being celebrated for those same qualities.
Absolutely.
So I think that people
You just have to do it creatively. You have to be entertaining while you do it.
I think that helps. I think if you that you have to be yourself, your best and loving self, but you can't be imprisoned by other people's opinions of you.
But somehow,
that's the message I'm trying to get out.
somehow I think from the way that society looks at women, if you go into the arts, you're kind of like given a pass. Like, oh, she's Kitty Carlisle or whatever, she's charming, on the set of What's My Line or, what have you in the 50s or 60s. But if that person was that way on the home front or at the school, at the PTA meeting.
Or the dinner party. She's a little too much, So finally, I think we're coming to a place where hopefully women can be themselves, whatever walk of life they select. Do you think that's true? I don't know.
Is it improving? Is it, Dina?
Well, I just want to, if I may.
Yeah.
I just want to say something to Annie that what you were just speaking about, that you described so beautifully and hilariously in your book about your experience with childbirth and postpartum depression. I found that incredibly. I had almost the exact same experience. I found it very, very relatable. And at the end of that chapter, you ended up just getting the government sent you a nanny. That was
the
in New
hospital,
York?
Mount Sinai Hospital, New York. When I left, they sent me a home helper for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and you said, so I didn't need a mental institution. All I needed was some help. And I was like, oh my God,
exactly.
Amen. That was so, I found that so incredibly relatable. And, it's like how, and the fact that, you have to, that you're not able to find anyone talking about these things is just mind-blowing.
Brooke Shields wrote a book about postpartum depression that was very well received.
She had it right. And I remember there was a big scandal, wasn't there, where Tom Cruise said something about it doesn't exist, and they got there was a big ugly.
He has a mechanical brain from another planet.
I think so. But I mean that's the source of the problem in the first place, is that reaction was in place before she wrote her book, and she knew she would get that pushback. She knew it was coming from Mission Impossible.
You're right. I forgot about that. She was a big spokesperson for that. Good for her.
So your storytelling ability is well honed because you do classes in one person speaking things. You call it owning your personal...
Yeah, crafting the personal essay.
Crafting the personal story. And also you've done one-person shows, and so that's all about storytelling.
I only have, as a writer, I've tried other things. I wrote half a screenplay, but basically I've limited myself to the only subject that I'm really passionate about, which is me. But I figure if I can explore me in deep and humorous and compassionate ways, other people might. My hope is, of course,
relate
that
to
they
it.
will
That's the
have
whole point.
A universal
absolutely.
meaning. So if I talk about my problems, people will say, "Oh yeah, like Dina just did. I had that. That resonated with me." And I think there are a lot of things that we don't talk about that are not considered polite conversation, or, well, one of the things I talk about first of all is thrifting. I'm not cheap. But I was brought up poor, and my husband and I have not managed money very well. And so I'm always looking for ways to save money.
Where were you born and raised before we got
I grew up in the Bronx, New York, which I hated. And I always knew I hated it, and I always knew I didn't belong there. But then when we got married, we lived on the Upper West Side. I brought my son up on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, which I loved, and I definitely did belong there. LA is another story. I like my life here. I don't quite understand. I've never understood LA as a city, as a place. I don't get it.
You came out here for the business. Your husband was and is a movie producer, right?
He's in the film business, and
so you came out here for work.
Yes, yes, because I had a dream of being a sitcom person, a sitcom actor. And I've gotten work, but it's never major. I've never had a major career, but I'm known in the business. What I'm known as, producers will call my agent and they'll say, is Andy available next week? Because they know I can get a laugh on one line and that I have no self-respect. I'll take the smallest, I won't say, no, I need more than that. If it's a job, I'll do it. I'll go in, I'll do the job, I'll get my laugh. And I've never had great... how shall I say, pretensions to being.
Where did this come from? Where did this humor and this glow that you have and the personality? What was it like in the Bronx? Who were your parents?
They say there's a saying. I don't know if you've ever heard it, that what are the comedians? I'm not a comedian. I'm a humorist. But basically, they say being a comedian is a way of turning your pain into money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all comedy comes from pain. I really do. But of it's a way of self-medicating. So something can happen.
That's very interesting observation.
Do you think that that's true?
Yes, people say, well, what is it about trying to go up there and impress 100 drunk strangers at 1 o'clock in the morning? Because you're seeking the acceptance of strangers, but it is when it's working, it's endorphin junkie inducing. You know?
Absolutely, you want to get that love, and I like being the center of attention. I like, they have this thing about celebrities. You shouldn't talk to them. You shouldn't. I'm just the opposite. I'll be in a restaurant and I see a table looking at me, so I know that they know who I am. And I'll wave to them. I'll say, yes, it's me. Come on over.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah.
Because I'm a whore. I'm a total attention whore. And also, what pleases me is that my audience now is not the audience, again, the rules. It's not the audience I was trained to believe. I was trained to believe as a performer. My audience was exclusively people like myself, older, educated, urban women, mostly Jewish. That was my target audience. My audience is not that at all. They're young, they're diverse. The best comment I ever got was a kid wrote in, I don't know why I relate so closely to a Jewish American woman in her 80s. I am a 16-year-old Afghan boy. And that's
But you're everybody's grandmother. And I think that's what makes you so funny.
I love that.
Yes, it's wonderful. I was going to ask you, what is your demographic? It has to be, you must have a lot of young people because it's TikTok.
A lot of young people. And most of them that stop me, they're in their 20s. And I think there's something new happening in our society, finally. I think there's a new respect for the wisdom of older women. Because I see it in movies. There's a whole I think Betty White had something to do with that. I really do.
Okay.
But the Golden Girls became a big thing again. And there are these movies, they're even in fashion. There are expressions now, coastal grandma, retired art teacher. These are fashion looks. When has grandmother ever been in a fashion thing? So I don't think it's just me. I think there is a movement now, which I've been very lucky, the timing has been right, that people want to hear. And a lot of the comments I get are, what would you suggest? Or I do that thing called Cameo, where people hire me, and they'll say, give my 20-year-old a pep talk. Oh. Give my daughter's about to get married. Give her some words of encouragement. Wow. So that people are finally seeing the wisdom that I've always known I've had, but now they're asking
it's
me
very
to share
familial. You have a grandmotherly quality about yourself, and everybody sees you as kind of that person.
It's interesting because I never had a grandmother.
Well,
I never had any grandparents.
You reparent and re-grandparent yourself.
Exactly. When you give it away, you're giving it to yourself. You're soothing yourself.
Say that again. I like that.
When you give it away, anything you need, give it away. That's why I'm saying if you need a friend, be a friend. Anything
That's
you
so
need.
true.
If you need love, give love.
I love that.
And I think since all of the wisdom of the world is now available to us, without having to go to the library and order a book that comes 3 months later when you no longer remember why you ordered the book. But everything is available to us. And that's why you see, young people responding to Bernie Sanders or somebody from a different generation.
Right.
It's about what he has to offer. And so it's available. And that's why I think that, everyone on TikTok who watches maybe some dance videos and they come upon you, they're like, oh, this is the grandmother I wish I had. Or
a lot of them say that. I wish you were, but also a lot of them talk about love and dating and what my feelings are about that.
Wait, Garrett has a question for you. Garrett, go around to where the mic is. Because Garrett is 16. He walked into the room and recognized you from TikTok.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know his face. He doesn't have to talk to me.
Yeah, are you the Krispy Kreme?
Yeah, the Krispy Kreme lady.
Oh,
that's what
great.
they call me. The Krispy Kreme.
My friend sent it to me, and we've been quoting it for the past year.
You see, isn't that weird?
This is a great focus group. That's the man right there. And the irony of that is you give talks to people, and you have one called Bridging the Gap, How I Stopped Hating Young People.
That's right. Because I did hate young people, because when you're old, They do. They treat you like shit. I could be in a restaurant with my husband, right? And there's the waiter, the unemployed actor, and he says to my husband, "And sir, what would you like for a cocktail?" And then he'll turn to me, he'll go, "And how about you, young lady?" And I want to slap him. Why is it sir and young lady?
I think he's
Interesting.
trying to hit on you.
I don't
Yeah,
think so.
yeah.
And he means well, poor kid. So I can't be angry. He thinks he's being
Chivalrous,
being kind and chivalrous, but it's not sir and young lady. It's sir and ma'am or sir and miss or whatever. And things like that, or when I'll do something that I think is quite bright, and it's like, oh, that's so cute. Oh, she's so cute. I'm not cute. Cute as a baby. Cute as a dog. You know, I'm a grown woman with wisdom, with life wisdom, and I want to be treated with
I
that
think you're right. I think people are
respect.
becoming aware of that now. I really
I
do.
think they are.
It's not politically correct to accept those types of interaction that you're talking about. I think you're right.
All right, let's talk about some real world issues. In your book, you say
Gaza.
people.
Not.
In your book, you say people who live in beige houses have beige brains. And I would like to add this question. Why do we travel and take photos of the lovely multicolored houses that decorate a hillside or a cityscape, and then we return home and paint our American home beige? What is wrong with us?
I don't know what that is. I think there's a fear. It's changing. I just read, for a long time now in architecture and home decor, for a couple of decades now, the mantra has been minimalism, simplicity, the mid-century thing. Now, I'm married to a Dane. I got married mid-century. So when I look at a mid-century house, I'm seeing my mother-in-law's house. Who wants to live like
Your
their
house is
mother-in-law?
spectacular because in one of your TikToks you give a tour. You've got beautiful blankets
It's all
and
colors
pictures. It's
and
really
details,
beautiful.
and I don't know why people are afraid of color.
You could do
Americans
that
are
as a
afraid
living.
of color.
You know what, Fritz? I think they're afraid of offending their neighbors. So
My neighbors are never coming in my house, so I
I
don't care about it.
insist on a color. My house is yellow. So that's like the least offensive, kind of like least bold, but it has to be a color. I don't want blah. I call the other colors blah. Our
Yeah.
cars are blah. Our
Right.
cars are basically the color of the road.
I see.
which
I have a
isn't
red
even
car.
safe.
I have a
It's
red
not
car. That's all I know about cars. But when they say to me, "What car do you want?" I say red.
It should be a color. It shouldn't blend into the pavement. That's
also,
dangerous.
I can find it in the parking lot easier.
Yes.
But you have great decorative skills. I'm surprised that people that see that TikTok of you giving a tour of your house don't say, "Come over and help me fix my life."
No, they don't. But I'll tell you something interesting that's happened because of it. Benny is in the film business. He's also a painter. He's painted all of his life. He just paints because he wants to paint.
So those paintings on the wall in your
So
TikTok
those are
his
mostly
work.
Benny's. And funnily enough, sometimes a fan has written in and say, "We'd like to purchase one of those paintings. How can we do that?" And we've
Very
sold
cool.
painting. That was never an intention, but I'll sell anything. My whole house is for sale. Yeah, you
What's
want
Benny's website? Because he's a very accomplished artist.
It's BennyKorzenArt.com.
So remember how in your book you were talking about that you love to just find wonderful things and that you have yard sales. Well, maybe now you could sell your things.
I
on
do.
Yeah.
I do that. For a while I was selling, any actor-writer needs another income-bringing profession. It's very unusual for somebody to live totally on their acting and writing. It's not an easy thing to do. So we've always had other business. Benny was a rare book dealer for a while,
cool.
and I did vintage fashion. And I even sold to Mad Men. When you watch Mad Men, some of those necklaces and dresses were from my collection because I love the treasure. I love going on weekends to yard sales and thrift stores and finding treasures. To me, it's a wonderful antidote to what I usually do, which is sit at the computer all day long.
Have you ever written for a TV show?
No.
You easily could. I
don't know if I could. I could do dialogue. I don't know if I could do plot. I can come up with funny lines, but I think plotting is a whole other thing. I have a lot of friends that do. I'm friendly with a lot.
But
a
then
lot of those
you're a
people.
punch-up woman.
I could do.
You
Make
could
something
punch
funny.
up, yeah.
It's what I do in my own writing. I will write a piece let's say I'm working on it. The kind of essays I write are like 2.5 pages long, right? 1,200 words. I get all the information down. I get down the bones of the piece. And then one day I get up and I say, okay, today I got to go back and make it funny and find out where the funny moments are. It's a deliberate part of my work.
Your skill shows up in your book. It's really wonderful. And it's the opposite of what your TikTok is, which is really funny in the fewest possible words. Your book is a little more verbal, and it's really fun.
And I can plumb the depths a little more in the book.
And you travel around the world, and you give your observations about all aspects of life, and you give very strong opinions, which are fun to read, whether you agree with them or not. One of your strong opinions that really delighted me was when you make this keen observation that journalists have a collective shock when lower income folks can live in a tidy home. So give us an example of that observation.
My neat and tidy thing. Isn't that amazing?
Just love
so
that.
funny.
Because it's
I'm glad you noticed that.
it's so your view is that it's very condescending for people to assume that because you don't have a ton of money, you don't enjoy living in squalor.
Right. The killer's family lived in a neatly kept home, and then, but they talk about it also with people of color. Maya Angelou lives in an immaculate. Why wouldn't Maya Angelou's home be immaculate? What do
So
they
funny.
expect?
She's a queen.
I mean, it's.
So yeah, and those are the types of observations that are throughout the book where you go, I never noticed, but she's right. Yeah.
You live on the west side, right in the Fairfax area?
Is that called the West Side?
No, I don't know. Whatever it is, over there,
West Hollywood
somewhere
City.
between here and the ocean.
Mid-Wilshire.
Yeah.
So
near the
we have
Cove.
a Gelson's in Studio City.
Oh, okay.
And right next to Gelson's in Studio City is an overpass that is one of the most densely populated homeless encampments.
Oh my God.
And I took a picture of this and sent it to my son. I can't find it now because I don't have my phone with me, but there was a guy who, I don't know it was a guy, I'm assuming it was a guy, had his little homeless encampment so beautifully appointed. He had a bookshelf, and he had plants, and he had books, and he had tchotchkes on it, and he had his little tent, and everything was arranged, and he had a welcome mat in front of his tent. And I thought, you will survive and make do with what life presents you.
That's
and I
amazing.
thought, and I sent it to him, and it was just such a shock. But it goes to what you say. It's very condescending to think that people can't
That's
organize
amazing.
those.
That's very moving.
Yeah, I mean, I think anywhere where people can dream about the home they'd love to inhabit, they know that the most important thing is to feel embraced by your home.
You know, I talk about happiness sometimes because that's what everybody wants. How do you get happy? What makes you happy? And that's one of my things. I say happiness is a comfortable home, interesting work, fun people to hang out with. And spaghetti, a lot of spaghetti. That's the thing. But now I see they're doing scientific studies about loneliness. That loneliness is a major health crisis in this country.
Well, do you think that people, because you're on TikTok, and I know that people get a lot of joy through scrolling through TikTok and feeling a connection with everything they're watching. Is that a substitute or is it a supplement?
I wonder about that.
For human contact.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. If it's a substitute, it's not a healthy one. I don't
No, I
want to knock
agree
my
with you. I
TikTok.
see that in my children and my grandchildren.
The screens.
It's lazy, and it's easier to relate through text than it is to have a eye-to-eye conversation.
I know. No, I miss that. I'm somebody because I'm a yenta. I don't know if I have to translate that word.
What was the name of your one-person show?
My first show was called Yenta Unplugged, my first show. But I like talking to people. I like talking to strangers. Well, you can't do it anymore because people are on their phones. So let's say, you're on a plane. You can't talk to the person sitting next to you, or you're online at the back. You're online somewhere.
But why do we feel that we can't interrupt someone, that what they're doing is so important?
I don't know. Because usually they look up, they're so startled. If someone's on their phone and you say, "Hi, excuse me, where did you get those shoes?"
Yeah.
They're not really open to it. They don't make you feel
It's like they've traveled to another universe and that you're going to be pulling them out of it.
Something like
I
that.
love the families that are having dinner out at a restaurant. There are 4 of them, and every single person on the phone, and they're not talking.
I know.
Like, why did you guys leave the house?
Yeah.
Really?
It's not a great thing. I mean, they're missing something. They're missing a way of connecting.
What have you learned about humanity being a TikTok sensation? I mean, is there a common thread of people's reaction to what you do?
I have to say, with all the ugliness in the news lately, I've had the opposite reaction. One thing, for example, and this is from young, in my career, I've always been told that that I'm a character actress. And basically that means I'm too Jewy looking, I'm too ethnic looking. That's not considered pretty. Even to this day, if a casting call went out asking for an attractive older woman, I would not be on that list. I'm not what Hollywood calls attractive. On the other hand, these young kids, now when I watch the news, they're all this and they're anti-Semites and blah, blah, blah. These young kids tell me that I'm beautiful.
You are beautiful.
They say it all the time. Hey, queen. Hey, beauty. Oh, I love that your hair today. I love your jewelry today. So that encourages me to think that maybe that generation is not as
Superficial.
intolerant
Right.
as
Part of
my
that is your
generation.
spirit shining through.
Huh?
Part of that is your spirit shining through in your
But
presentation.
it's the young people that are seeing it, not the people my age, men my age.
Well, we don't need
Do
that. You're taken. Sorry, guys. She's not on.
They're
she's
looking
off
for
the
a
market.
35-year-old.
But let me say this, and I'm not in acting, but I do know, like, I can do a little bit of math, not a whole lot. But there's one star of a movie, and everyone else that you're watching is a character performer. So I would think that there'd be a lot more work for someone who's interesting and can do this part well.
No,
and
my looks have limited me to playing obnoxious women. And I don't mind it. It's fun. I can do it. But they're not casting me. Why couldn't I be a judge or a lawyer or a doctor? I am an educated woman. I'm a literary woman. I don't look
You
like
could do
what
a one-woman
Hollywood
show
thinks.
about Ruth Bader Ginsburg tomorrow.
I could, really. And you know who played her? Some British. Oh, no, what was she? I
Helen
think she
Mirren
was
or
from New
someone.
Zealand or Australia.
I don't know.
The actress who played her.
All right, let's talk about some specifics in your book, and I want you to weigh in, like, in a little more detail involving your opinion on said matter. So, in your book, you say in Santa Monica, you passed a family with an adorable little girl who was wearing a T-shirt with a screaming Balenciaga logo.
Yeah.
Really? A toddler shilling for a fashion label? I would call that child abuse. So
I'm
Amen.
offended by that.
Yeah,
I
me
am
what's your
too.
take on labels and our...
I never. If I'm going to wear a label, I got to be paid.
Right?
And just the whole idea for me and also some of these labels, you have to think about the meaning of them. You know, Chanel was a Nazi collaborator and a very bad person.
And now the Ralph Lauren thing, the polo guy is about that big on the shirt.
Really?
It used to be really tiny, like this little thing. Now
Yeah.
it's that big.
I mean, I don't get it.
They're
I don't
daring
get
you not to wear
labels. I don't understand it. And one that makes me crazy, of course, is Burberry, because they don't need a label. They have a certain look. Why would you spend $800 for a beige plaid scarf? It's ugly. The stuff is ugly. So what you're doing is you're wearing things to show the world that you have money. And that's not something I'm interested in. I'd rather get something at a thrift store that's got a little character, that's got a little style, maybe something ethnic, maybe something tribal, maybe something vintage.
Yeah, like
I don't get the whole
It's
label
like
thing.
because you're a creative, right? So a creative wants to say, "Hey, look what I put together."
Exactly.
I have an eye for the way I'd like to present
Exactly.
myself, not just I have a pocketbook.
Exactly. So what was it? There was a guy in Beverly Hills, was it this past year, who got robbed in a Beverly Hills restaurant of his watch. And his watch, I forget what the make was. It was worth $500,000. And I did not feel any empathy for
No.
him.
First of all, who would wear that
If I
out?
had $500,000 to buy a watch, I would use it to start a foundation.
There you go.
You know, to send poor kids to college or something.
Why are you putting $5,000 on your wrist when it could be feeding people?
Duh. Hello?
All right, so
or
you
educate, giving, inmates
scholarships,
education.
Yes, give to the world
Prison
because we
inmate.
all live here in the world. When you give to the world, you're actually giving to yourself. You live here. Let's take care of it with each other. You also say that now that you are of a certain age, if you don't want to do something, you're much more comfortable saying, no, it doesn't work for me.
I know I've learned. It's taken me all my life
I'm
to
right
learn
there
how
with
to
you, girl.
say no.
Teach young people how to start. Here's Garrett and Dina. Teach them how to start now.
They don't. Well, young people want to be popular. They want to be liked. I don't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah, people
I
pleasing.
got
Yeah.
my friends. I got my family.
No, exactly. And your tolerance
said
for
nice-
assholes becomes very thin.
Right? But I said yes to things that I knew were a mistake. I went camping. Why would I ever go camping? and I stayed at a friend's house. She lived in the country, and there was a log cabin, and we had to take a ladder to get down to our room, and the latrine was outside. There was no bathroom in the house.
Mm-hmm.
There was no running water in the house. Why did I agree to stay in a place like that?
Cool, quaint.
And now I've given myself. I have a line. It's the line that you have to have certain lines for certain situations, like seeing a friend in a play.
Right.
If you hate it, and if you hate what they do, you just say, "I'm so glad I came," or "You did it again," or
Good for you.
It's
I know.
good for good job, good for you. My line now, when somebody proposes something that I know, I just say, thanks for the offer, but I'm not really comfortable with that. That's not going to work for me.
I
Good
love
for you.
it.
That takes a lot of guts,
I
but
love
good
that.
for you.
know?
I wrote a song. I played a song for my cousin, and she said, "You're having fun." Yeah, so you can use that.
Let me talk about your talks. If people want to, do you still do those? The first one is Bridge the Gap, How Do I Stop Hating Young People? And the other one is Tales from the Mouth, Comedies of Errors.
Yeah, I do these programs that are just a collection of stories. So I put these stories together. So they're just for fun, and it's just an evening or an afternoon of stories on subjects that I designed according to who the audience is. You got to know your audience, right? So depending on who's there, it might be women's issues, it might be aging issues, it might be artsy stuff, depending. I do anything I can to get myself in front of people. I like speaking my own words. So I can
Amen.
come as a lecturer. I do book signings now. People are inviting me to talk about the book, and then I sign them.
Well, I just
there.
want to add, you could read any page from this book, and it would be delightful.
And is it available on Amazon? It's still for sale,
It's
right?
on Amazon, and we have audio rights, so it's on Audible if you want to hear it. It's on what's the
Book
other
of
thing?
Annie,
And it's on
Humor,
Kindle.
Heart, and Chutzpah from an Accidental Influencer. It's a great title.
So there's one more piece of advice I'd love for you to give to young people that's in your book, because sometimes I think young people get a little stuck in how they are and who they are and their value within the world. One of your pieces of advice is that if you feel like you've had a falling out with somebody, you should maybe reach out to this person because it wasn't as big a deal as you thought it was or as they thought it was, and they may not come to you, so go ahead and go to them.
I do. I believe in mending fences. And I had that in my own life where I thought a friend was being neglectful, so I crossed him off my list. And then I started losing friends, and I thought, I better get in touch with the people that... And I called him. He was thrilled to hear from me. We went over. We had a great bunch, and we've been seeing each other regularly since. He never knew that I was angry at him. So, right, I say to people, if you want to cheer yourself up, call somebody who doesn't know you're angry at them. You might get a
Oh,
surprise.
that's interesting.
And I just love that. And I think that's really, really important because kids do a lot of this sort of jockeying for position just because of self-preservation or forming themselves in the world. I was talking to a young person, and I was talking about whether or not she had that feature on her text to where someone would know or that she would know that they had read her text, or that someone would know. What is it, Dina? That they would know, that you can toggle it on that you would know if someone read your text. Yeah. So she said she has hers turned on because she wants them to know that she read it and that she's ignoring it.
That's a passive aggressive
Gee
move right there.
whiz.
Yeah.
It's called.
Wow.
It's
ahead.
called Being Left on Red.
Being left unread. Yeah.
Oh
right.
my God! All
But-
these new terms that we have. I keep learning all these.
Well,
new...
I never thought I would hear the phrase coastal grandmother on the media path said.
And what is
And
your
do you know what it
definition
was?
of coastal grandmother?
No, I mean it's I'm
Do you
sure
know
whatever
what the look
Annie is
is?
thinking of.
It's a very
yeah.
Diane. It's the look of Diane Keaton in all her recent movies. It's linens. It's beige linens, white turtlenecks, natural fabrics, kind of classy.
I call it crunchy
Yeah.
hippie lady.
It's like if you took, that show Grace and Frankie.
Yeah.
And you combine the styles of the two characters. That would kind of be
A little
the
like
Coastal
that.
From. Yeah.
What's the best television experience you've ever had?
My own experience.
Seinfeld?
Seinfeld was great, I have to say. But, on a television show, it all comes from the top. Jerry is a very nice guy. So everyone in the show was treated with respect, and because that's the way he is. So it was just fun. It was just fun hanging out, and there was always food on the set. There was always takeout Chinese. It was like being in New York. It was a very New York kind of set.
And you like shows that taped in front of an audience because you like an audience reaction to what you
I
do.
like a live audience.
You do
yeah.
have to tell the story of what happened on Oprah because that is so relatable. Oh my goodness.
Well, I got myself on Oprah in a weird way. I don't think you can do that anymore, but I just sent them a letter. And I said, you should do a show about ethnic men who reject their own women. Because I have felt a lot
That's a
of that in
great
my
story.
life.
That is a
actually.
great
Because,
theme.
again, when I talk about Hollywood, what I'm really... or maybe I shouldn't get into that.
But you know what I
anyway,
think it is? It's men who had a toxic relationship with their mother and don't want to marry her.
Well, I think it's more than that. It's
Okay.
ambitious men.
Okay.
It's ambitious men who want a trophy.
Oh, okay.
And so the women from their ethnic background is not that trophy.
Got
right?
you.
They want
Okay.
Barbie.
They want a little shih
They
tzu
want
girl.
Barbie.
All right.
And much to my amazement, they decided to do a show on that. They invited me to come, but I have this thing about food. Since I said before, I was brought up with no money. I was brought up not to believe in waste, and so when there's free food, I take it all.
Yeah.
So they flew me first class, and in those days on first class, you
Oh,
really
my
got
God.
serious stuff.
Linen tablecloths and
So
everything.
right, and they said you have your little mimosa or your champagne, and they say, well, for your hors d'oeuvre, do you want pate or caviar or smoked salmon? I'll say yes to everything. I had that, and I had everything else, and I ate everything, and then I came to my hotel room, and it was time for dinner, and I ordered all the most expensive things on the menu because I'm a pig. And I can't, and I have no control. And I got up in the morning. I had to go on the show, and I was deathly sick. I also had breakfast in the room, eggs Benedict, which I hate. I never eat, but I just could not stop myself. And you go to the green room. In the green room, they have a table.
I know. It's a buffet.
So by the time I got out, I was so ill that it was my time to speak. I couldn't say anything meaningful.
Well, what makes the story so great is that the stakes were high, that you felt uncomfortable. It was Oprah, and you're still fine. Like, people can go through something harrowing that makes you kind of like your head hurt every time you remember it, and it's still okay because it was a lesson. It taught you, okay, maybe next time take it easy, even if it's like really difficult.
Right.
But it
You know.
happened, and you're fine.
And also at the time, I had nothing to say. I didn't have a book. I didn't have a show. What was I doing? You don't go on Oprah with nothing to sell. The whole thing was a waste of time.
Who else
What
was
we
on there
saying
with
before
you?
about turning pain into comedy. My very painful experience then. I've been dining out on that story ever since.
That's what I mean.
Who else was on there with you? Anybody else from television or on the Oprah show? Who else was on there with you?
Well, it was just representatives of different ethnic groups. So you had black people, you had Asian people, you had Latino people, all talking about how they don't date each other, how the men don't want those women.
That's
that
so
they'd rather
interesting.
they'd rather that marrying or dating a white woman specifically, can we just get
Totally.
ethnic here,
Totally.
would be the American ideal.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if that's changed. I really don't know if that's changed.
Dina, any thoughts? Dina always knows about these sorts of trends.
In ethnic groups. Do the men still want Barbie?
I mean, I do believe that this is something that the Black community does discuss on platforms like TikTok, where you do hear Black women and some Black men calling out, black men for mistreating black women and kind of seeing a white partner as a prize, and kind of disrespecting, black women in the community that way.
I mean, I'll tell you something funny about that. My husband is from Denmark. Now, if you've been to Scandinavia, every woman on the street, I had a Puerto Rican friend who went to Copenhagen. He said, even the ugly women are gorgeous.
Oh my goodness.
Because every woman
You need
is
sunglasses.
tall and blonde
Everybody's
and
so
blue-eyed with
white.
perfect
Right.
skin. I mean, they're all beauty queens. My husband thought that I was very special and exotic. He said, a blonde? Why would I want a blonde?
See?
So everything is, what's the word I'm looking for? Perspective, your own perspective.
perspective.
Coming from Scandinavia, the last thing he wanted was a pretty little blonde girl with a cute
Penny,
nose
you're a
and-
lucky man. You get a beautiful, attractive lady with more
exotic prince.
spirit than 5 people.
Absolutely.
Can I ask any one question that I
Sure.
had for her? So I just wanted your opinion on this really quick. So I've heard other creators on TikTok talk about how they don't necessarily find that having viral content or success, people talk about how there could be you could have 1 million followers and it's not necessarily going to translate to success offline. But you've been able to attain that. So I don't know if you have thoughts
Well,
on that or advice or anything.
I haven't done this. We had an agreement, Mackenzie and I, when we started this. We were not going to chase after brands. I don't want my profession to be a TikTok star, or I'm even embarrassed by that word, influencer. So we decided we would do our thing, we would say our truth, and whatever happens, happens. So we've never chased after, nobody on my team, but I don't really have a team, has ever gone to Krispy Kreme to say, you should invent a crispy donut and have this woman. I mean, if they come to us, they come to us. And sometimes they have. We've had some brands that are very cautious about who I align myself with.
Some influencers get more power than they should have. And I'll give you an example of that. I work at a comedy club called the Ice House.
Okay.
And when Twitter got famous, some of these influencers said, well, I'm going to see if I can make some money in a comedy club. And they mention on Twitter, and they've got 2 million followers, and they sell out the Ice House in 30 minutes, and then the people come up to see a show, and there's no show. These are not performers. These are people who can talk in 15-second sound bites.
wow.
And they bring their other influencers out there, and people are walking out because there's nothing entertaining about the show.
But the good point you're making, Fritz, is that you have to have more of a 360 package, which Annie has.
Oh, no,
she can
Annie's
bring
not
it.
who I'm talking about.
No, I know, but
I'm
like
talking
you're
about the
saying.
power
But
of
she's
this
the perfect
being
person
an
to be
influencer.
famous.
Yeah.
On
I
TikTok,
haven't
because she already
explored it.
has.
I mean,
yeah.
The thing is, I really need money. I really want to make money, but I also want to keep my integrity. So I do those cameo things. I get a monthly nothing from TikTok itself. In the beginning, people were making lots of money just from TikTok. They don't do that anymore. But I don't want to spend my life, how shall I say it, exploiting this influencer thing. I was happy to do the book. I wanted to write a book. I like having a book out there.
Have you put that on TikTok?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yes, I do talk about.
Well, then
it.
you should put your shows. You can put your shows on TikTok as well. I would.
Yeah.
I don't think you're exploiting it. I think you're taking advantage of what you've developed, which is this beautiful
Right.
online
no,
character.
I do from time to time. If there's something going on, I let people know that something that comes in with a book launch. When I had my first book reading, I did put it on TikTok. I said, if you're in LA, blah blah blah. But there are some people. There are kids now. You say to the kids, little kids, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And they'll say, I want to be an influencer. I just heard that at a college they're teaching courses in content creating.
Oh, yeah.
I don't get that.
Yeah. When I
don't
worked in the
that.
news business, I knew it was over for local news when we would get these interns from USC and Cal State Northridge, and they'd come in and you always interview them. You say, so what do you want to do? And they say, well, I want to anchor a newscast. I said, well, who are your heroes? Tom Brokaw. No, the guy from Access Hollywood. You know what I mean?
Mario, whatever
that whole thing. That's
so
what they think is a
funny.
news anchor.
And I did that show. He's very sweet.
Oh, no, he's a
Mario
nice guy. I know
Lopez,
Mario,
is that his
yeah.
name?
All right,
But
let's end with something positive. Something uplifting. So in your book, you say that you would submit to the Moth, which explain what the Moth is.
Well, the Moth is the premier storytelling organization in the world. They're global. And they have storytelling shows in every city. Some of them are just small competitions called slams. Some of the big shows called main stage shows. And I'm a storyteller. And they kind of knew about me. Somebody had mentioned me. And I submitted to them a couple of times a year, literally for 9 years.
Yeah.
And when I would do a show, I would tape it and I would send them the tape. And once in a while, I would say, yeah, not right now. This is looking good. I would get maybe a little half an inch of encouragement, but nothing.
What are the parameters? Is it length of time or number of words? Or what are they?
I don't remember. I mean, anybody can still submit to the Moth. It just has to be a story. What they say is, and what I also say is, a good story is a dramatic event that happened to you that changed your life in some way. So that's basically what a story is. And I kept performing and kept submitting and kept performing and kept submitting. And then I sent them what I thought was a really strong story, and I didn't hear anything. And I walked into my husband's office and I said, I can't do this anymore. It's too painful. I know I belong there. I'm not getting any response. I'm going to stop. This is it. And I swear to God, the very next day, they called from New York. Thank you for your patience. We want to bring you on the Moth main stage. We want you to perform in L.A., Berkeley, St. Louis, and Boston. We want you on the radio show. We want you on the podcast, on the website, and probably we want to include you in your book. And then a while after, and now I've been friends with them since then, and they've just started again developing a new story, which I'm also going to tour with them. And at one point, I did say to somebody, "What took so long?" And they said, "You got better." And so what I want to say to people is that failing is a great learning opportunity. Mm-hmm. That all those years, every time I performed, I went home and studied what I did wrong and how to make it better. So there are overnight successes. I was not one of them. And I think most people aren't. And what it means is if you want to do something, you keep doing it until you get it right.
So do they have a road show where you and 3 or 4 other storytellers go out and they take you city to city?
Yeah,
that's
it's
cool.
Not a show. It's individual. We just did Portland, and I don't know what the rest of the schedule is. And it won't be the same people on every show.
I think they should film it in black and white and put it on HBO next to Smartless on the Road. I would watch that show.
Yeah, they're very resistant to that.
All right, where should people go to check you out if they don't have TikTok yet?
I have a website. It's just me. It's just AnnieKorzen.com. I try to keep it up to date.
Yeah,
and also they can reach me from there because they can send an email from the website.
Okay, great.
But that's it. I mean, I'm on Instagram. I don't know how to use it. I don't understand Instagram. Why do people want to look at pictures?
But anyone can go to Amazon. And,
yes.
And is there an Audible book of this that you read?
Yes.
So there's everything you need on Amazon to read this book. I highly, highly, highly. This is one of my favorite books of the year. I know it's only January, but I'm going to stick to that. In December. I'm still going to be telling you in December, this is one of my favorite books of the year. All right, here come your closing credits. Thank you so much for joining us. We would love to continue this conversation with you on Instagram and Twitter, where we are at MediaPathPod, and on Facebook, where our show page is MediaPath Podcast, and our Facebook group is MediaPath with Fritz and Wheezy Podcast Community. You can find full video podcast episodes loaded with extra bonus visual content on our YouTube channel, MediaPath Podcast. You can write to us at MediaPathPodcast@gmail.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please give us a nice rating wherever you get your podcast and talk about us, if you would, on social media or on the TikTok if you've got it. You can sign up for our spicy newsletter at MediaPathPodcast.com. We want to thank our wonderful guest, Annie Korzen. Our team includes producer Dina Friedman, John Maddox, Bill Filipiak, Thomas Hubble, Mason Brown, Garrett Arch, Chris Baldwin, Jordan Reyes, and you. Our theme music is by me and John Maddox. I am Louise Palanker, here with Fritz Coleman and Annie Korzen. Be well and wise, and we will see you along the media path.
You guys are so great.
Did you enjoy it?
I love the look. I want to ask you something.